Beloved brothers and sisters, I plead with you today, in the battles you face, both seen and unseen, you are not called to draw your sword and charge forward in fleshly might. No, instead, you are called to stand, to remain steadfast, and to trust in an authority far greater than your own. We are creatures who tremble at our own shadow, yet this battle is not ours to wage. The command is simple: cease striving, cease trusting in your own strength, and allow the Supreme Commander to engage on your behalf. We are a stubborn lot. When threatened, we dig trenches, raise shields, and muster our own force, as though the universe trembles before the power of our will. We cling to our strategies and our plans, convinced that our hands, our minds, our cunning alone will secure victory. But this is folly. It is the height of pride. You are dependent. You are weak. You are incapable of orchestrating true, lasting triumph. And yet you exhaust yourselves, you fret, you toss and turn through nights of anxiety and despair, all while the path before you lies shrouded, the outcome uncertain. How long will you continue this madness? Consider the ancient warrior who, upon seeing the foe bearing down, instinctively grasps his weapon. But the true warrior, the one instructed by the heavenly commander, stands down. He rests, confident, not in his sword, but in the orders he's been given. Too often, we refuse these orders. We insist on proving our worth. We imagine that to yield is to fail, to rescue is to lose. But the commander says, cease from your labor, trust, rest in my strategy. You are not abandoned when calamity comes, when sickness spreads through your body, when the tide of adversity threatens your marriage, your finances, your children, and the roar of panic begins to well up in your throat. Do you draw your sword? Or do you drop to your knees and whisper, I will relinquish this fight. I will not contend. Cease, stand silent. Let the commander orchestrate. He is present in every courtroom, every ward, every broken-down structure. He sees, he judges, and he fights in ways you cannot perceive. But you say, I must do something. Yes, you must. You must repent of your unbelief. You must humble yourself and say, not my will, but thy will. You must stop directing the war. Instead, you must pray. Pray with fervor, with trembling faith. Cry out, Lord, intervene. Then watch as he goes forth on your behalf. Does he never ask you to act? Certainly he does. He bids you obey his commands. Commands born of humility, of charity, of communion. But the battle, the crushing blow, is his to deliver, not yours. Friend, if your hope is built on your bank account, your job, your good reputation, you are defeated. You are bankrupt. But if your hope is anchored in the eternal warrior, you cannot fail. The struggle may rage, but you have no need to sweat. He says, I will go out with you and fight for you. That is not hyperbole, that is reality. You cannot extinguish the blaze with your handful of sand. But the commander sends rain. You cannot break the fortress with your puny attack. But he casts it down from heaven. And so, beloved, the heart of this message is this: relinquishment, not defeat, not apathy, but faith-filled surrender. You do not bring the fight. You bring your hope. You bring your dependence. You bring your worship. You yield your will. You acknowledge your incapacity. And you plead, deliver me. Then, with hands raised in prayer, you lift your eyes in expectancy and trust. You acknowledge that this is no battle you can win on your own. You have no right to victory. You have no credentials. You have no shield sufficient. So you bow, you plead, you wait. But do not mistake waiting for passivity. It is the opposite. It is an active posture of faith, a soldier standing guard, awaiting orders. It is a bride awaiting her beloved. It is a farmer tilling the soil, waiting for the rain. You actively cry out. You actively repent. You actively confess your weakness, but you do not seize the sword. You do not take matters into your own hands. You sit before the fire, warming your famished soul, confident that deliverance will come from beyond your feeble grasp. How much suffering is caused by our attempts to carry the load that was never ours to carry. How many marriages are shattered by our striving. How many friendships fractured, health ruined, faith crushed. All because we insisted on leading, insisting on battling when we should have surrendered. Because we imagine that we are generals, and so we strategize, and we control, and we manipulate, and we trust in how we've always done it. But the commander has another plan, a plan that is not obvious, a plan that cuts short the pride of man, a plan that the moment we humble ourselves ushers in victory. It may be that your battle will not end today, that in God's wisdom it will rage until he sees fit to bring it to a crescendo. But know this, any day you cease from your labor and yield your fight to the supreme warrior, that day is victory. Any moment you release your grasp and surrender your plan, that moment is your deliverance. Not because your problem has vanished, but because your soul has been freed from the prison of self-reliance. You walk upright, unburdened by the weight of carrying the thing you never could carry. Let me ask, what is the weapon he wields when you yield? It might be providence that intervenes, a job offer, provision in the midnight hour, an unsought reconciliation. It might be conviction unleashed in the heart of the one who opposes you. It might be peace descending, even while the storm rages. You will not always see it, you may not hear it, but it is faithful, so believe it. Believe that the commander orders the wind and the waves. Believe that he hides you under the shadow of his wings, and when the furnace is hot, he is in the fire with you. He is working, he is accomplishing, he is fighting. That is the dignity and the shame of the believer. The dignity that you have a warrior fighting for you. The shame that in that moment you stormed ahead alone. You tried to rescue yourself. You tried to justify your independence. But independence is idolatry, and when that idol is demolished, and it will be, you will see your naked despair, and then, amid your ashes, you will glimpse the glory of that banner raised on your behalf. Be careful, this is not for the faint of heart. Proud hearts will chafe, flesh will rebel, the spirit longs to assert itself. It will whisper, pray, and then act. And yes, in the realm of action, obedience follows. But first comes submission. Obedience without submission is still pride. So guard your heart. Practice the discipline of waiting, and when conviction surges, repent. Bow, let go, cling, and when the struggle claws at you, respond again. No, I will not take up this fight. I will pray. And the battle is no longer yours. Dear ones, you will have many victories and some failures, but the measure of your faith is found not in the tally of successes, but in the posture of your heart. The posture that, amid the enemy's charge, looks up and declares, "Not mine, but thy battle." That posture silences fear. That posture overthrows discouragement. That posture enables you to stand firm, calm, confident, unshaken. You become a witness. You become a beacon, not because of your prowess, but because of his authority enacted in and through your weakness. So let us arise today in humility. Let us announce to the battlegrounds within and all around that we will go no further by our own hand. We will not charge. We will not scheme. We will not manipulate. We will repurpose our efforts to prayer, to worship, to trust, immeasurably more powerful weapons. We will release our fists and raise our hands. We will lament. We will confess. We will plead. We will wait. Let this be our march, and let the victory surely belong to the commander alone. May every heart here resolve, not mine, but thy battle. And may the life we live from this moment on be a testament to the power of surrender. The battle is not yours. Victory is not achieved through your strategies, willpower, or strength. True faith begins when self-reliance ends. Yield control and trust in God's supreme authority. Waiting on God is not laziness. It's disciplined, prayerful dependence. You are not called to take up arms in fleshly power, but to fall to your knees in prayer, repentance, and obedience. His deliverance may come through providence, inner peace during suffering, or unseen spiritual intervention. Your eyes may not see the fight, but the commander never leaves the battlefield. Victory does not always mean changed circumstances. It means a heart that confesses, "Not my battle, but yours, Lord." That heart stands unshaken, regardless of what rages around it. Cease striving and submit to the one whose wisdom spans the universe. How tragically we persist in viewing our struggles as private battles, as if we alone were capable of determining their outcome. We gather our fears, our frustrations, our anxieties, and we fashion strategies born of our own understanding. Yet what arrogance underlies this behavior, as though our frail minds can chart the course for eternity, as though our weak hands can deliver ultimate victory. To strive in our own strength is to redefine faith as self-reliance. Faith, however, is the very opposite. Faith pauses, not because it has nothing to do, but because it trusts one who acts with perfect knowledge, timing, and power. You may say, "But surely I must try." Indeed, obedience has its place. Yet here's the trap. Obedience divorced from submission is still disobedience. You can latch onto a command, perform dutifully, and still clutch tightly to your mastery of the outcome. You can pray, you can tithe, you can serve, and still cling to your contingency plans. The heart remains unyielded. True submission isn't not doing, it's doing as unto one who knows infinitely more than you. It's laying your action at his feet and whispering, "I release it. I entrust it." Isn't that at the heart of the gospel? A cry of desperation when we realize our battle is beyond us. A recognition that our righteousness is filthy rags, our counsel empty, our striving vain. We stand condemned, and in that surrender we are justified, not by our feeble efforts, but by the power of the one who overcomes all. To submit is to echo that confession, not in what I do, but in what is done for me. That conviction permeates our battle posture. It reshapes our daily surrender. It dismantles the idol of independence. Stop the struggle, for the yoke placed upon you by grace is easy, and the burden is light. Lay down the weapons you were never meant to wield. Lay down your calculations, your persuasive speeches, your frantic modeling of solutions. He calls you not to plan, but to pray, not to engineer, but to worship. Can we grasp that? Can we believe that obedience does not mean self-sufficiency? If we could see with spiritual eyes, we would know that His hand is not slack. His ear is not deaf to our cries. He is neither aloof nor indifferent. The sovereign commander has placed you under his banner. Let it suffice. You say, "If I don't work, who will feed my family? If I don't plan, what if disaster strikes?" Examine your heart. Are your motives love or fear? Are you driven by faith or horror? The path of independence is paved with illusions that comfort us in the moment, but condemn us in the long run. You labor not only to add days to your life, but to tick off achievements in the ledger of your soul. And so the heartbeat of fear propels you, even when you've professed trust. Yet the one who commands the sparrows fall cannot be ignorant of your need. Why then do you hedge your bets with anxiety as if he might be unfaithful? I don't say this lightly. I speak from a place of terrified soul, because I have fought the urge to seize the fight. I've battled the lie that says, if I don't do it, it won't get done. I have trembled at this idol of control, at the subtle whisper that exalted me above faith in his sovereignty. But the fruit of such striving is exhaustion, fracture, discord with others, fear that masquerades as diligence, and what little peace you win is counterfeit, a fleeting glimpse under a canopy of dread, a temporary calm before the next wave. What is it, then, to cease from striving? It begins in the secret place when daylight fades and duty is done. It begins when you slip down from your throne of self-assurance and kneel, not in shame, but in anticipation. You come trembling, placing your doubt before him. You admit your smallness. You confess your undue burden. You plead for mercy, provision, not because he's liable, but because he is just and kind. You ask him to dismantle your strategy, to redirect your footsteps, to shift your understanding. Then you act in simple obedience. You follow his word, you care for your neighbor, you love your enemies, you serve without calculating results. But crucially, you detach your heart from results. You let the ripple go wider than your capacity to control. You lay your hands open, trust open, and when outcomes fall apart, you do not shatter. You do not tighten your grip and resume control. You testify, I release this to the hands that formed me, that speak the stars into being, that knit me in the secret of my mother's womb. That voice that spoke creation is still speaking. That hand that shaped the waters is still active. That knowledge that ordained the universe is still current. Let me ask, where are you still striving? In relationships, the urge to persuade, to win, to justify, to be accepted, that struggle is not your cross, his is. In parenting, the desire to shape your children by your own blueprint. Has it driven you to discipline through fear or manipulation? Offer it up. In finances, the tight fist around your treasure, fear, driven idle, wrought repent in physical health. Are you exhausted by self, regimens, anxious at every calorie, haunted by every reflection? Submit it, for he sustains your body in spiritual life. Are your devotions a chore to earn your worth? Lay them at the foundation of grace. Read his word because he spoke life. Pray because he hears. Give because he gives. As you begin to yield, you will feel the trembling of your idols, the voice of self-condemnation, the terror of loss. Know that the Spirit brings them to the surface to be scarred by the fire of truth. Do not run. Do not suppress them. Expose them, confess them, and let the peace of surrender flood your soul. His peace surpasses understanding, but it is known, sweetly, truly, by hearts that have given up their illusions of control. You will learn to walk, and perhaps you already are, by faith step by step. You won't see the next ridge, you won't know every twist, but when fear strikes, your battle cry will not be panic. It will be prayer. When trouble arrives, you will not scramble. You will not scheme. You will not take counsel with your flesh. You will fall down. You will say, I refuse to wage this war. And in that moment, the authority of the cross descends into the chaos. His arrows fly through the night. His shelter overshadows. His love is an anchor. This is hard, but this is life. It is costly. Many would rather fight than trust. Many would rather defend a losing cause than let a sovereign hand prevail. They will tell you it's lazy, it's irresponsible, it's dangerous. They will call it passivity. You'll hear voices from pulpits, platforms, and podcasts urging you to fix, to hustle, to perform. But sift them. Weigh them, let them speak. Even if loudly, still ask, does this raise my posture before the Almighty, or my posture before men? The call to cease from striving is not an optional doctrine. It is the posture of the redeemed, the posture of God's children, the posture of faith. It is the pathway to peace, the doorway through which heaven breaks into your battered field. It is the posture of the true gospel of grace, that Christ has done, and you now rest in what he accomplished. That his strength is made perfect in your weakness, that your submission is not defeat, it is dignity. It is Christ being lifted up, and you being lifted alongside him, into freedom, into hope, into joy unshakable. So here stands the test. Will you stop? Will you yield the fight? Will you trust a voice that says, "Trust me, believer, let me fight. Let me alone direct. Let me alone ordain"? Will you press your trembling lips to those words and whisper, "Yes, yes, I surrender this, not by my striving, but by your sovereignty"? If you do, you will find a peace that no stratagem can create. You will find a rest that no workload can earn. You will find a grace that no work can exhaust. Remember, every saint who stood firm did not emerge by might nor by power, but by the Spirit of the living God, who directed them to yield. Cease your striving, submit, trust, and you will know, and make known, that battles are not won in the furnace of our effort, but in the kingdom of his surrender. Faith is not a feeling. It is not a passive mood that drifts in when the music is right and the lights are dim. It is not the flicker of a vague hope that things will work out because they always have. No, faith is war. It is an aggressive refusal to believe the lies of the flesh. It is a full-throated rebellion against the tyranny of fear. Faith is not sitting back and doing nothing. It is standing still because the command was to stand still. It is bowing down not because of weakness, but because of trust in the one who fights on your behalf. It is not inactivity. It is the highest form of obedience. It is not laziness. It is submission. It is not retreat. It is a different kind of charge. The carnal mind looks at faith and sees weakness. It sees surrender and calls it defeat. But heaven sees surrender and calls it power. The flesh tells you must do something, but the Spirit says you must believe. The voice of anxiety says, take matters into your own hands, but the voice of the shepherd says, lay it at my feet. And in that moment of decision, the war is not out there. It is in your soul. Who will you listen to? Whose strategy will you trust? Whose strength will you lean on? And yet, so many people live as if faith is passive resignation. They confuse surrender with apathy. They say, God will do what he wants. And so they sit idle while sin flourishes, while relationships disintegrate, while their hearts grow cold. But that is not faith. That is fatalism. That is spiritual laziness wrapped in theological language. Real faith is alive. It is rugged. It gets on its knees and weeps before the throne of God. It fasts. It cries out. It clings. It chooses to believe when the mountain doesn't move. It walks into the fire and says, even if he does not deliver, I will not bow. That is not passivity. That is power. When you say, I trust you, you are declaring war on your flesh. You are crucifying your pride. You are silencing the demand for control. You are confessing that your wisdom is not enough. Your strength is not enough. Your timeline is not wise. Your hands are not clean. You are confessing that the battle is not yours to win by force, but his to win through surrender. And when you really believe that, when your faith is not in your faith, but in the faithfulness of the one who called you, you will act, you will move, you will live, but not in the panic of desperation. You will act in obedience, fueled by trust. Faith is what made Abraham leave his home, not knowing where he was going. Faith is what made Moses stretch out his staff over the sea, knowing that nothing in his hand had the power to divide water. Faith is what made Daniel keep praying when the decree went out that prayer was illegal. Faith is what sent the prophets into cities that would mock them, imprison them, and kill them. And in all these things, their faith was not passive. It was obedient, it was surrendered, it did not manipulate results, it did not demand explanations. It trusted, it yielded, it obeyed. So I must ask you, What are you calling faith that is really just fear in disguise? Where have you stopped praying because you think God is not listening? Where have you surrendered your fight not to God but to despair? That is not biblical faith. That is defeat wrapped in religious excuses. Real faith continues to wrestle with God like Jacob until the blessing comes. Real faith does not let go. Real faith is persistent. It is humble. It knocks and knocks and knocks, not because it doubts the heart of God, but because it knows the door will be opened in His time. Faith does not mean the absence of agony. Jesus Himself cried out in the garden, "Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me." And yet, He surrendered, "Not my will, but yours be done." And in that moment, we see the highest expression of active surrender. He did not run. He did not negotiate. He laid down His will, trusting that the Father's plan was better, even though it led to a cross. That is what faith looks like, not escape, not denial, but obedient trust in the face of suffering. Faith listens more than it speaks. It waits more than it works, not because it is lazy, but because it refuses to move ahead of God. And when it does act, it acts because it has heard from God, not from culture, not from pressure, not from the endless whispering of the flesh. Faith does not try to engineer outcomes. It does not play politics with obedience. It says, "If I perish, but I will obey." That's what Esther did. That's what Paul did. That's what every man and woman of God has done when they were truly surrendered. They acted boldly, but not in presumption. They acted because they trusted, and their trust made them fearless. Some of you think surrender is a moment, but it is not a moment. It is a lifestyle. It is not something you do once at an altar. It is something you wake up and do again every day. You surrender your expectations. You surrender your reputation. You surrender your comfort. You surrender your outcomes. You live crucified. You pick up your cross daily. And in doing so, you find that obedience becomes light. Why? Because you are no longer bearing the burden of success. You are simply bearing the burden of faithfulness, and that is a burden that the Spirit Himself carries with you. The one who surrenders is the one who is free, free from the fear of man, free from the lies of the enemy, free from the endless tyranny of what if, free from the pressure to perform, and that freedom is not born of inactivity, it is born of active dependence. You don't stop working. You work with a heart that knows it is not in control. You don't stop planning. You plan while surrendering the results. You don't stop speaking. You speak what God has given and leave the rest to Him. You don't stop praying. You pray with tears, knowing He hears you and knows more than you do. That is the kind of faith that pleases God. Not the kind that boasts of certainty, but the kind that walks into uncertainty with confidence in Him. Not the kind that demands a sign, but the kind that walks in obedience before the sign comes. That kind of faith looks like surrender on the outside, but it is stronger than steel. The world will mock it. The enemy will hate it, but heaven will honor it. And you will find at the end of your striving a peace that cannot be manufactured, a joy that no storm can destroy. Faith is not sitting idle, waiting for God to do everything while you do nothing. That is not surrender, that is sloth. But neither is faith a frantic rush to fix everything in your own power. That is not obedience, that is idolatry. True faith discerns the line. It knows when to speak and when to be silent. It knows when to move and when to wait. It knows that the heart of the matter is not what you do, but why you do it, and in whom you trust while doing it. So you see, there is no contradiction between surrender and strength, between waiting and working, between rest and obedience. They live together in the same heart, because the heart is anchored not in outcomes, but in God, and that anchor holds. That anchor keeps the soul steady in the storm, not because the storm stops, but because the anchor is buried deep in the rock that does not move. That is what faith is, not passive, not indifferent, not weak, but yielded, trusting, and utterly committed to the one who cannot fail. You think you know how God will deliver. You think you've figured out the pattern, the method, the timing. You think that because you've read the stories and seen the miracles and memorized the verses, that you know how He'll show up. But God will not be boxed in by your logic. He will not bow to your expectations. His ways are higher, not marginally, infinitely. He does not need your insight to determine how He will act. He is not beholden to precedent. He is not restricted to the realm of the visible. God fights through unseen and unexpected means. And that is not a poetic truth. It is a crushing, soul-shaping, life-altering reality. You pray for deliverance, and you imagine it will come with noise, with thunder, with clarity. But He may deliver you in silence. He may part the sea in the stillness of the night. He may collapse the wall, not with a sword, but with a shout. He may strike down the enemy, not in front of you, but behind the scenes, where you never see it happen. You may cry out for rescue, and all that changes is your heart. All that shifts is your posture, and you wonder, where is the victory? It has already begun. You just didn't see it, because you were looking in the wrong direction. How many prayers have gone up from the lips of saints, asking for one kind of miracle, while heaven was already answering in another way entirely? You cry out, Lord, remove this pain. And He says, no, I will strengthen you under it. You plead, restore this relationship. And He says, not yet, for I must sanctify you first. You demand, vindicate me in front of my enemies. And He says, no, I will vindicate you in secret and teach you to love them in the meantime. And all the while, you think He's silent. But He's not. He's just working in a way you didn't expect. He's dismantling your idols. He's severing your dependencies. He's testing your faith. He's preparing your deliverance in the very areas you would never choose to look. Do you remember Elisha and his servant? Surrounded by an enemy army, the servant trembles. What shall we do? He cries, and Elisha prays, not for a miracle to come, but for the servant's eyes to be opened. And when they are, what does he see? Chariots of fire, armies from heaven. They were already there. They had been there all along. He just didn't see them. And how often that is us, shaking in fear at the enemy before us, while the armies of heaven stand at the ready, unseen. We think we are abandoned. We think we are alone. But God is already fighting. The help is already present. We simply haven't been given eyes to see it yet. Or consider Joseph, sold into slavery, wrongfully accused. Forgotten in prison, for years it seems that God is absent. No lightning bolts, no divine rescues, just silence and suffering. But what is God doing? He is orchestrating a deliverance that will feed nations. He is preparing a throne through betrayal. He is moving unseen through the wicked schemes of men to accomplish a sovereign plan. And when Joseph is finally lifted up, when the curtain is pulled back, what does he say? What you meant for evil, God meant for good. That is the language of someone who has seen God work in unexpected ways. We must understand this. God is not bound by our timing. He is not obligated to show His hand when we demand it. He is not a hired defender who reports to us. He is the sovereign King, and He fights for His glory. He delivers in ways that exalt His name, not ours. And that means we will often be left in the dark. That means we will often be confused, bewildered, even broken, until, in the end, His purposes are revealed, until the tapestry turns and we see what He was weaving in the pain, what He was shaping in the silence. You say, but I don't feel Him. Faith was never built on feeling. You say, I don't see any change. Faith is not about what you see. You say, there's no sign that He's fighting for me. Read the Word. Was there any sign in the sky the day Esther went before the king? Was there any trumpet blast when Ruth chose to follow Naomi into poverty? Was there any fire from heaven when Jesus knelt alone in Gethsemane, sweating drops of blood? Yet each of these was a turning point in history. Each of these moments was soaked in divine strategy. God was moving, God was fighting, but no one saw it. Yet, and even now in your own life, what makes you so sure He's not working? Just because the storm hasn't ceased doesn't mean the Savior is absent. He may be walking on the waves even now, coming to you in a form you don't recognize. He may be calming the storm inside you before He calms the storm around you. He may be raising you up in secret, preparing you for a stage that you do not yet understand. Do not curse the silence. Do not despise the stillness. They may be the very instruments of your deliverance. But we want fireworks. We want burning bushes. We want red seas to split every time we face opposition. And when they don't, we doubt, we despair, we assume He's not there. But the truth is, we've made an idol of the spectacular. We've forgotten that God often works in shadows. He often moves behind the curtain. He is the God of whispers as much as of thunder, the God of quiet provision, of subtle protection, of slow sanctification. He is not always in the earthquake. Sometimes He is in the still, small voice. Look at your life. Trace the hand of providence. How many things have happened, not by your wisdom, not by your effort, but by what seemed like coincidence. And yet, you know better. You know doors opened that you didn't knock on. You know you were protected from things you never even knew threatened you. You know your heart was kept from plunging into ruin, though you were blind to the danger. Who did that? Who orchestrated those things? It was not chance. It was not fate. It was the unseen hand of God, fighting for you in ways you couldn't perceive. So now, when the next battle comes, and it will, remember this: the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because you can't trace His hand doesn't mean you can't trust His heart. Just because you don't hear the sound of war doesn't mean heaven is silent. He may be fighting the disease in your body by sanctifying your soul. He may be fighting the betrayal in your life by deepening your dependence. He may be fighting the injustice against you by preparing a higher vindication. Don't rush to conclusions. Don't rewrite your theology to fit your impatience. What did Jesus tell Thomas? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. That is the kind of faith that honors God. That is the kind of faith that triumphs when everything looks like loss. That is the kind of faith that says, I don't see the answer, but I trust the one who gives it. I don't see the end, but I know the author. I don't understand the fight, but I know the warrior. And that kind of faith will not be disappointed. He may use people you don't expect. He may speak through means you've dismissed. He may lead you down a road that looks like failure. But at the end, when you look back, you will see that every step was ordered. Every moment was measured. Every loss was turned to gain. Every battle you thought you lost was actually a victory disguised, because He does not fight like we fight. He does not wage war according to the flesh. His weapons are not carnal. His strategies are not logical, but they are mighty, mighty to the tearing down of strongholds, mighty to the lifting up of the broken, mighty to the shaming of the wise by the foolish, the strong by the weak. So do not despise the unexpected. Do not fear the unseen. These are His tools. These are His ways. These are the hallmarks of His glory. You wanted a sword. He gave you a cross. You wanted a crown. He gave you a grave. But through that grave came resurrection. Through that cross came salvation. And through your trial, yes, through your pain, will come something that glorifies Him more than your comfort ever could. because this is the God who fights, not with human weapons, but with divine power. Not in the spotlight, but in the secret place. Not always in the way we want, but always in the way that brings him glory.